David Cannizzo, welcome to the podcast for Membership Administration Leaders. You are one of the Membership Administration Leaders, I think, in Victoria. We're sitting at AFL House, the home of Australian Rules Football, and it's played a big part through your career and still does. I'd like to learn a little bit about your background and where it's taken you. And obviously then leading to membership administration and the pitfalls and everything else. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly going over your tertiary background and how we end up sitting here with each other.
Yeah, look, it wasn't always going to be sport for me. I finished school not knowing what I wanted to do and commenced an engineering degree at Melbourne University and realised very quickly into that, probably 6 months into that course, that it wasn't something I was going to do for my career. I found it quite interesting, but it wasn't something that I was overly passionate about. So it's actually my father that directed me in the way of in business and sport, and in particular sport, because he always saw that I went back to straight to the back of the Herald Sun, which we got delivered on a daily basis, to read the sports section every day, and had quite an obsession for it. So I moved on to La Trobe out in Bundoora and completed a sports management degree for the next 3 years and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I knew probably in that first semester that was the right move, and whatever would come from that would come.
What were the things that appealed to you?
I found sports governance, sports policy, sports law really interesting, and these are subjects that I touched as electives through school that I thought were okay, but didn't really interest me because it was very just solely business based. It wasn't tailored or touching on sport really in any regard. So all of a sudden you applied to sport, I was like, I really find that quite useful, and I'd like to know more about that. I was playing football at the time for my local club in South Yarra. They were a club in the Southern Football League, and I had the opportunity to become an intern and interned at the Southern Football League in the back half of 2007, and then got an opportunity to apply for a position of football operations manager at the start of 2008, and was lucky enough to get that job. So that was where my paid sports management career commenced, and I was there for the next 3 years, learning plenty, doing big hours as you do in sport, but trying to absorb as much as I could. I was there for 3 years, as I said, and then I moved to the then Moorabbin Saints Junior Football League, one of the larger junior football leagues in the country. Became their general manager, which was a great step up for me. I was ready to move out of operations and challenge myself. It wasn't a long tenure. It was only 18 months, mainly because my previous mentor and boss had left the Southern Football League, and I had the opportunity to go back there and become their CEO, which was a real passion. I was still playing in the league at the time, so I'd umpired in it, I'd played in it, I'd been the operations manager of it, and I was quite passionate about where that league was going. Demographics were changing in that southern region of Melbourne at the time, and this is in the 2010, 2011, and so I got that position, and I'd been there since 2012 to 2017. 5.5 year tenure. Had the opportunity to oversee the development of a netball competition in a metro league. So for those that are listening, people go, "Oh yeah, netball, that's not that new," but at the time it was quite trailblazing. Netball in a suburbia of Melbourne, and with no netball courts at football venues, we had to rethink how we built it. 7 teams in year one, and then finished off at 91 teams in 2017. We also established a women's football competition in 2017 in my final year. That was amazing. That cultural change throughout the organisation, and just generally dealing with the clubs. The members were the clubs, and dealing with them and their office bearers. It was really rewarding. And then at the end of 2017, I had the opportunity to apply for the Sandringham Football Club in the VFL State League competition, and we're aligned with the St Kilda Football Club, and I've been there ever since, the last 18 months or so.
Yeah, quite the learning curve. So if we just go back to the Southern Football Club, because that's where we first met. You're the CEO, and I have a bit of software that I was trying to flog you. And I remember you lamenting about clubs coming to the league to yourself, cap in hand, saying we need more cash, we're not being run well, and all those sorts of things. What do you see as the common gaps with these membership organisations? You sort of got to see it as a governing body in effect.
Yeah.
And you had to sort of clean up the bits or the problems. What do you see as the usual issues with clubs that are struggling?
So dealing with member clubs, there's often, particularly at a local community level, there's often too few doing too much. Particularly on a community level, there's plenty of participants involved. Football clubs have been around a long time, usually having seniors and reserves. There's at least 44 players around. With the committees, it's changed. Volunteerism and people having the free time to do these things and helping out in their community organisations has changed. So too few doing too much, and the reality is the gaps that I saw were people not having the skills necessarily, and no fault of their own, because they're the last person to sit down in an AGM, as we've heard many stories before, and they're trying to do their best to help their organisation. They're time poor. They're doing whatever needs to be done in order to make sure that organisation keeps its doors open, and most importantly, the teams are out there financial and being able to play on the weekend. There wasn't a great level of organisation or efficiency in how they went about things. And as a league leader, and my staff, we recognised this, we saw this, and we heard this. The clubs were telling us that they were doing it tough and it was getting harder, and that red tape that was being applied from government, from the AFL, all for the improvement of the sport, but it was having an impact. So, you talk about the software that you tried to flog me, and I think we definitely did engage with it. It was around trying to we can't keep giving handouts. We're not full of cash and money to be able to give out. Everyone's got to pay their fees. It's got to be fair and equitable. But what we could do is we can engage with support services to make their lives easier, hopefully. And in this situation, we felt that if we look at the membership platform of Tidy HQ at the time, or Tidy Club at the time, actually. So I knew there was another name. It was around, okay, can we help you improve your running, your governance, in your transparency of how you do things, your record keeping, the way you communicate with your people? Can we help you do that better so that that it's, one, not a massive work task for you, and two, you hopefully do it better. The clubs that had, or office bearers that had experience or skills in CRM or other areas of might have been okay in that area, and so that they were fine regardless, but there was a lot that weren't, and that was a real focus of mine. I wanted to take the pressure off, because I could see people, and this is in a period as well in the early 2011, 2012, mental health wasn't as prominent as it is now, and around, there was a stigma around talking about it. The reality is a lot of people are under a lot of pressure. Work, football club, family, whatever else they're doing. So we wanted to try to help them make it easier. Yeah,
we typically find that the people running the clubs are running other things, be it other committees or businesses or what have you.
Absolutely.
It's a bit of a broader issue. I'd like to continue through the podcast with what I call Flern's failed learnings, because I think we easily gloss over the failures, and really they're opportunities for us and the listeners to learn from some of these. I'd like to touch on finding more committee people. I caught up with Terry Dillon from Terry Dillon Solutions this morning, and he's got a theme about, everyone should have a job, 50 jobs, and for 50 people and all those sorts of things. What did you see as the reality of trying to find volunteers and trying to allocate administrative jobs out there?
Yeah, look, the first thing I'd say is that every club is different. So some clubs will have no problem with finding 50 people, and others, the reality is they're not a big club at all, and they might only be able to find 10 or 20 people. One of the learnings I think we found was that we as a league, our board and our staff, were not experts in club development and support. We were trying to partner, like I mentioned before, with Tidy and other organisations that could help us help clubs. Terry Dillon Solutions is another example of one that I engaged with in my later years at Southern, because we had identified that clubs were really doing it tough. We saw receivables start to blow out from clubs because of the pressures of managing the finances of a non-profit organisation. We saw the volunteerism drop off. There was less people on committees that were provided to us and shared with us as a league. There was the same people going on around again. There was the same presidents doing it for more than 2 or 3 years because the fact that there was no one else. There was
succession plan.
Absolutely, and the other part was there was people that thought they had a succession plan. Other people came in within 6 months. The previous president had come back. So these were all alarm bells for us. We implemented what was called essentially a club risk register, and we could measure how clubs were going based on different risk areas. So finances is an obvious one, on-field performance, facility, current facility status and management, and so these things led to us to believe that we need to provide greater support.
So just give us more of a snapshot of this league. You said 91 netball teams. How many football clubs? What was the, I don't know if you have this number on the top of your head, but overall broad number, revenue for the entire league, so all the clubs.
Yeah.
What would you say is
I'll give you an idea. When I started, it was less than 30 clubs. We had, was it about 80 football teams? There was no netball, there was no women's football. And it had been a region that was an ageing demographic, so therefore juniors flowing through to the league had really kind of ceased. What we saw over the kind of 2000s and then in through the teens was that we saw club growth. We saw growth out in the southeastern corridor where we established new clubs. By 2017, we grew out to 36 clubs. We grew football teams out to over 100, which included the establishment of a women's football competition. I think we're 110 in my final year, so that was a really good growth there. And netball, from 7 teams in year 1 to 91 netball teams at the end. So clubs were turning over. It ended up finishing, when I finished there, was 4 divisions. So Division 1 clubs would be turning over over 250,000. So they were registered for GST. They had ATO taxation obligations. There was Division 4 clubs that would have been turning over maybe 70 or 80,000. So two ends of the spectrum. The reality was we needed to tailor support for each of them. There was no correlation between a Division 1 club that was turning over 300,000 necessarily healthier or more viable than a Division 4 club that was turning over 70 or 80. So that's where like a program like a Terry Dillon Solutions or just club development support that we could provide was really vital, because it was around trying to reduce the burden by breaking it down. So if we just look at it simplistically, is going, okay, what are the fundamentals that need to be done, and how can we help you do that? So the concept of 50 people, 50 jobs is a brilliant one, and that's where around how do you break it up into 50? Well, identify what they are, come up with basic dot points around what those tasks are, and then let's help them do that. Because it's one thing for the league to say, oh, we're there to support, but then the reality is it's up to clubs to do it. Well, how can we actually support? Let's bring in people that have programs and mechanisms and frameworks that have been proven and are helping. Yeah.
Well, now you've graduated to the CEO of Sandringham Zebras Football Club, a VFL club. And now you've got a different problem set, one that you probably didn't have to deal with directly, or probably indirectly, as the league CEO. What do you see as now? Do you see as the major theme stopping membership growth, and I suppose as a result, participation numbers as well in a league?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I should say from the outset, greater level of appreciation of all that volunteers do. Being at Clubland, even though I am in a lucky position to be paid for what I do, but the reality is that the work is still phenomenal. And what I've found in my 18 months at the Sandringham Football Club is that what's stopping us, no different to local clubs, in doing these things, is coming up with better systems and efficiency of how we're doing what we need to do, so that we can prospect and we can look to open our horizon and be innovative and do more things. So we talk about membership for a moment in a similar way. what I've overseen at Sandy is not having. We didn't have a membership program of any sorts. We were using Excel spreadsheets, and that was okay for the numbers that we're talking about. Yeah. But the reality is, it wasn't the most efficient. It was difficult to track and code around what we were doing with each of our members and when, and it wasn't allowing us to do more. And what I mean by do more is actually grow out and prospect and talk to more people, and hopefully they come on as members, but at least build database and hopefully do other things to get involved with our club and be more community focused. So part of that journey's been around, all right, let's identify the issues, and we've done lots of change very quickly. So I'm first to admit that we haven't done everything right. There's been certain things that we've probably rushed through in reflection, with the view that, okay, if we can do this, then we can really start to expand and grow our offerings and our benefits that we provide membership.
Are you able to give us any explicit examples of that, or as well as maybe removing friction from some of these practices that you sort of came into?
Yeah, look, the first thing that I'd point out from learning last year in particular was that too much change too quickly can really be unsettling. There's people that have been used to membership and the way that they've engaged as a member with the club, and as a fan with the club for a long period of time, that if all of a sudden it's very different and there's no real warning or levels of engagement around how that relationship is going to change, then that can create issues. One of the examples was us just in how we started to communicate with our members. We engage, as an example, this does sound like I'm going to continue pumping the Tidy product, but the reality is I've used it on a couple of different, for a couple of different organisations now that I can see the benefit. But moving to that platform mid-season and then trying to migrate data and communicate while we already had a limited level of resourcing at the club, and then trying to follow that through, and then the inconsistencies that created in our comms to members was really unsettling for our staff, because it's stressful, because we're trying to learn something new, and it's also unpredictable for the member. So that was just one really small example. As we moved through the back end of the year, we went a little bit more aggressive because of the timing of the year. The season was done. We migrated to not only a different platform being Tidy, but we also moved to online payments for membership, making that really easy. We looked at all the benefits associated with that, but at the same time, it was very daunting and confronting for those that have been used to doing membership maybe manually and printing a form, and that was very new to them and somewhat confusing.
Yeah. Okay. And if because I know you're on the board for Gymnastics Victoria.
I am, yeah.
And I'd like to know a little bit more about your board, the position of the board within sport, because it's an area that a lot of sports clubs, a lot of associations and non-profits, broadly speaking, in my experience, don't have a huge amount of attention on the board. And a lot of the smaller clubs could learn a lot from some of these bigger state bodies that have boards. What have your learnings been from now sitting on a board, and how has that sort of played into your thinking with governance and succession planning and things?
Look, what I would say is it's really interesting in that I've been a CEO or a GM for the last 12 years. 9 years. My first 3 years was an operations manager reporting to a CEO, GM. And in reporting to a board and managing upwards, you realise a lot about managing expectations, trying to forecast things, have foresight in what you do, but you also get a lot of things pushed back down, and that can be really frustrating as an administrator, going, I've got all these things to do, and got the board more things to do. And I think as I've somewhat matured in my roles, but also in just my experience in the industry, I've understood more about that. But definitely being at a state sporting association level, but more importantly, being on a board now, regardless of the level, it's given me that hands-off, bigger picture view of what's going on in the organisation and why we think of the questions and why we ask of what we ask of the GM or the CEO, when you're not in the thick of it, in the mud, trying to work your way through it, because you're too close to it. When you can step away and actually just look at risk, look at governance, and understand how we can improve and how we can evolve without being in the nitty gritty, it gives you a greater perspective, and I think that's a great it's a great thing. You don't get that. You do get that when you're in charge of an organisation, but you are very close to it. So it's nice to be just at a distance, and you can challenge and question things in a different way. For me, if I compare it to my roles, I've been at local community level for community football, netball. I've been at state league football now, but at clubland, to now have a position where I get to get a bird's eye view of state sport for gymnastics. But regardless of the sport, being able to see state focus, dealing with the national body, dealing with Sport Australia, dealing with Vic Health, Vic Sport, whatever it may be, state government, it gives a whole different perspective, and that's helped in personally. That's helped in my learning and my skill set, and which has in turn helped me back in my day job as well.
So I'm a big proponent of cross-pollination of ideas from different sports and different backgrounds. You're just about due to complete your MBA as well, which I'm sure is also adding a few more ideas for you. Have you seen that sort of cross-pollination of ideas from different sports? Like, have you taken bits from gymnastics and put them into Sandringham and netball and so on?
Definitely, and I was really honest when I applied for appointed director role with Gymnastics Victoria, and I was really honest with the board when I applied for it. I said, this is just as much about me wanting to get something out of this for my development, because I'm really focused on self-improvement as much as it is. I have things from sport, from a really a football league that was arguably didn't have the best reputation in the late 90s, early 2000s, to now being a really reputable organisation that I think I can add value. And so it has gone both ways. If I give it some practical examples, the risk management process of an organisation like GV, a state sporting organisation, is phenomenal. I've been super impressed with how they do that. There's been elements that were very familiar to me and similarities for what I did at the Southern League, and at the same time there was a level of that needed to be brought in and revised at Sandringham, and that's been really helpful, seeing how they do that process, how they report at a board level, how they monitor, without going into the nitty-gritty all the time. There is that detail at management level, but with what we're reporting at subcommittee or board level, that's been really helpful. And equally, I think I've supported a lot of commercial and marketing knowledge for GV. GV's in a space where they run some massive events. They've got a great reputation, but I believe they can really grow in the commercial space. With corporate sponsorship, with the way that they commercialise their assets.
Gymnastics Victoria have great growth as well, don't they? Enormous
growth, and it's been like that for the last 6 years or so, with really steep growth. And the way it's forecasted is that it's going to continue that way. So. Hopefully I've helped already in that regard, but I want to continue to help in that space because I feel like that's where I can provide some support, and I believe that that's what they're looking for as well. So that's been where it's been two-way. Yeah.
So just focusing back on membership administration, what are the biggest roadblocks for you right now? We've just come out of the VFL strategy planning meeting around memberships. What do you see as the biggest roadblocks?
Yeah.
There's more affiliation going on with the AFL now.
Yes, there is, and in a lot of ways that's a real strength, and in some other ways it can sometimes be diluted, because what happens is then it becomes part of something much bigger, and it doesn't get the dedicated focus. So that will still be worked out, I think, over time. If I talk about it from selfishly from a Sandringham point of view, our challenge is talking to more people, and this is not uncommon to the other VFL clubs as well. For a long period of time, and these are traditional clubs, we've been around a long time. As I mentioned before, we've been around for 90 years. We can't keep talking to the same people. We work hard on trying to develop new events or initiatives that will bring in new audiences. We've got one for the first time next month, our Women in Sport and Business Breakfast. The first time we've run this ever in 90 years. We had a Ladies' Day earlier this year for the first time. That is deliberate. They're about growing our female audience, because it's.
I don't think I've heard anything about men's sport this whole month. No. It's all about women. This is great.
Correct. Yeah. It's amazing. And what's great about that is it's not new, but we haven't been talking to 50% of the population. And for Sandringham, when we're trying to talk to new people, that's why that's a focus. So that's a real focus for us now. Why we know that is because I suppose the maturity of us evolving our membership management, and we know who we're talking to and how we're talking to them, and we know how often we're talking to them. So that maturity has allowed us to understand how we can grow. But that's holding us back at the moment, because we don't know who to talk to because we don't have details. So we need to move that in the right direction. And the other part is that this is not new for those out there. It is resourcing, but we need to think about how we can resource differently. From a Sandringham point of view, we have really redefined our staff's position descriptions and their own KPIs. Every staff member has a KPI that is connected to membership in one way or another. Now, it may not be all around growth targets, etc. Some of it may be around fulfillment. Some may be around just the membership management. Some may be around the marketing of it. Some might be around the time sensitive, around the financial invoicing and follow up of membership, whatever it may be. But the reality is we're changing that approach with our own staff. But even if we put to the example at a local level where you don't have the ability to have paid staff, is volunteerism, is interns. So where we've really had some good success, and more so this year. Last year not so much, and that was reflective of the way we built our internship program. This year we've been able to build dedicated intern positions within the club that are responsible for these areas, these important areas.
Yeah, so let's just quickly touch on, you've got interns, which is starting out the professional career. On the other side, there's an opportunity sponsored by, I think it's the federal government, with people that are in effectively retirement age.
Yes.
Do you know a little bit more about that? Do you utilise that at all, or have you seen that in action?
We're exploring it. So the new age allowance for people that are, from memory, over 55 and up to 67 can be drawing on super, but up into a certain level. It's based on assets that they have, etc. We haven't found someone, so we've put it out to our database. We actually sent out an open letter saying if you fit this and you're interested, they can be paid.
Or if you're listening to this podcast and you're interested,
that's right. Get in touch. The reality, they can be paid an allowance essentially to do 10 hours a week for the football club or for the non-profit organisation, but you need to fit those key criteria. So we've explored it, but we haven't aligned a person that fits that criteria yet. And
so personally, what support or resources do you go to or do you lean on, and where do you find them?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was at league level, I used to really guide it to things like the AFL, because they had community club support, resource support, other providers like, as I said before, Tidy or Terry Dillon Solutions. In an interesting way, at Sandy, it's been very similar. A lot of what we do at a state level is not so different. I mean, yes, it's in a greater spotlight, but the actual the fundamentals are the same. So we still lean on all those things. The other part that I've been able to really kind of tap into quite a bit is our competition, our fellow clubs. I can call Coburg, I can call Williamstown football clubs and Frankston and say, look, this is what I'm looking for. There's plenty of examples last year, my first year, where I really wanted to pull some things apart around how we structured our coaching contracts. I went to Coburg. How we structured our function manager position, whether we went with full-time, part-time or whatever. Frankston and both Williamstown were really fantastic with that. So we try not to reinvent the wheel. We utilise that. If they haven't been able to help, then of course we go to other outlets and use some of the mentors and some of the organisations that I mentioned before, who have assisted myself and the organisations I've worked for in the past.
What hurdles have you personally had to overcome? Because you've taken some pretty giant leaps, in my opinion, along the way.
At Sandringham?
All the way along. You were an operations manager, then you all of a sudden you're GM, CEO. Yeah. It's a pretty excellent trial. Yeah,
look, I probably reflected on this quite a bit in the last 3 years, particularly because of my MBA studies, the importance of self-evaluation, and I've realised that I've always been in a rush to do things, and it's partly a behavioural personality trait, but it's also about I think getting leadership positions at a younger age. So I'm 34. I got my first GM position at 26, and arguably didn't have all the answers or all the skills to be able to do that role, but really kind of jumped in head first and had a go. But what that's meant is being self-aware around what I didn't know and be prepared to learn. That's part of the reason for the further studies. But some of the things that I've realised is just having to listen to to the feedback that I'm getting along the journey around things that I can improve on. And I've had that. And I've had that not just from my employers being my board, but I've had it from colleagues, I've had it from fellow staff, I've had it from member clubs that have given their opinion on how I went about certain things. And I've always been open to that, because the reality is I want to keep improving, and I want to, at the end of the day, I want a mutually beneficial outcome, whether it's with an employer, whether it's with a club, whether it's with a colleague, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So I think that's been good. Some of the other things is realising I need to slow down. And I think in this last 18 months, particularly in the last 6 months, I've realised I have to slow down. There's a lot I want to do at Sandy. I'm really passionate about this role, particularly. Being in clubland, it absorbs you. You're part of a team, but I've realised I have to slow down, and I have to just prioritise what I'm going to focus on. There's so much I want to do in this great club. It's got such a proud history, and I feel like it's got so much potential. I know it's got so much potential, but I have to slow down. And so at the moment, it's really pinpointing. Late last year was around membership. I really wanted to rebuild our membership end to end. You know, the platform, the payment gateway, the fulfilment, the marketing. We've really now set that up. We'll refine and improve. This year, right now, it's all about Sandy by the Bay, our function room. We want to get our function room as busy as possible. It performs really well in the summer months because it overlooks the bay, it overlooks the Sandy Yacht Club, it overlooks the football ground. But during the winter, when less things are going on, it struggles. So we're really focusing on that at the moment.
Yeah, okay. And this is a really hard space to be playing in. Like, it's a grind. A friend was applying for a job at the AFL earlier today, and I was talking about the realities of what I see working in sport is that, you know, it's quite often your weekends, it's your evenings, you've got a young family, you've got to juggle that as well. What compels you to stay in this space and be in this space? What's driving you?
It's a really good question. I think it's part of it around the personality and the behavioural traits that I am by nature energetic and passionate. I went through a strength-based test with some colleagues a few years ago, and I came out, and one colleague defined me as an excitable puppy. So I found that interesting. It was a really
some people might have to turn the speed of this podcast down.
So I'm not sure about that, but so that's by nature. But the one thing I would say, in all seriousness, is that I really enjoy leading, and I really enjoy evolution and positive change. I've been involved with positive cultural change around diversity and inclusion in my role at the Southern League, through having a dedicated pride round across a whole competition, 100 footy teams, 90 netball teams, all being involved in celebrating LGBTIQ+. And the same token, the establishment of a women's football competition when the league and the leagues before it had never been involved in that. And now in a similar way with Sandy, we were establishing a partnership this year with St Kilda for the management of the VFLW Southern Saints, and hopefully next year we'll take that on and manage it in our own right. That is so satisfying for me. That drives me. That doesn't feel like work to me, and it never has. I'll take it with me at night, on weekends, on holidays, because it becomes life evolution, and it becomes so enjoyable, and it is so enjoyable.
So you've been exposed to, well, arguably the best sports league in the country with the AFL. You've been exposed to Gymnastics Victoria, which has, I think it's the highest record of growth of any of the sports just about.
Correct.
In this state, which is the sports mad state of Victoria. What do you see as the gaps in great sports membership administration? Like, what's the difference between, say, a Collingwood and, I won't say any other names, but, you know, one of the lesser clubs, or, you know, something of that nature? Like, what's the difference there? What's the gaps?
From what I can see, and this is just based on a limited window, because again, I've been here for 12 years, so that's I suppose enough sample to be able to make a comment on it. But there'll be others that have other opinions. Yeah. No one else is listening. I think it's about the intent. I really do. I think the intent of, I think everyone has the ability. I think it's about where you prioritise. And if I think about all those different member-based organisations that I've dealt with, regardless of the members and the structure, as I've mentioned, it's what are you prioritising, and how do you want to go about liaising with your membership? If it's your membership of your clubs, how are you going to treat those clubs? How are you going to communicate and liaise with them. If I'm dealing with memberships as humans, how do we want that interaction to be? You know, I was reading an article recently as part of my MBA studies around 3 levels of engagement with loyalty programs, and in a way, membership is that. You know, level 1 is let's go out with something generic. You know, Isaac, this is what you get as being a member with our club. Second phase is us tailoring something for you. I can tell Isaac that you like coming along to President's Lunches on match days at Sandringham, so we're gonna give you that experience, and we're gonna give you 10% off because you know you're supporting our club in that way. And then level 3 is I think the most important part is the part where we can come to you and ask you for some feedback around what you think of that President's Lunch or what you think of the Sandringham experience, or you choose to do that in your own right. That you have the ability to give me a call, and depending on the size of the organisation, but at Sandringham you can pick up the phone and give me a call as a member, and you can give me some feedback around the food of that luncheon, or the speaker that we had, or the theme of the day, and that can be two-way, and that can be led by us or can be led by you. And I think it's the third phase, and when that's going, that's the difference between okay membership management and really strong two-way collaborative membership management.
Okay, that's pretty insightful. All right, let's end with some maybe some more personal quickfire questions. You ready?
Oh, nervous.
Don't be. So, how many hours do you typically pull a week? Just average.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it's a lot better at Sandringham than what it was previously at Southern.
Southern Football League, I didn't know when you slept, to be perfectly honest.
It was with lots of different clubs. So quickfire, I'd say 50 in comparison to probably 60, 65 in the previous role.
Tell me something that is true that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Something that is true that nobody agrees with me on. That's a really good one. And so, can I be stubborn and still think I'm true even though that's not? The moon landing didn't exist. Never happened. Controversial. It's timely. It only happened in the last couple of weeks.
I will not. This is quickfire. What brand or organisation do you look up for membership experiences? For great membership experiences.
Great membership experiences. I'm going to say inside the industry, Richmond Footy Club. I think what they've been able to do with those numbers, they were doing those massive numbers before they won the flag, so it's important to recognise that. And I'm going to say outside, I'm going to go down the loyalty scheme again because I've done a bit of work on this previously, but Tesco. Right. In the UK, yeah, amazing.
What makes them so amazing?
So without going too deep into it, but those levels of engagement before, but they've got their own terms and framework of how they do it. But their ability to tailor and service each of their customers in their own ways that they would like is phenomenal. That's
great. I'm breaking the rules with my own quickfire questions. What do you want to be when you grow up?
Well, I didn't know.
Engineer.
I don't know. It wasn't that. I just picked that course because I didn't know. I honestly had no idea what I wanted to be, other than a professional sports person. But I was never any good.
What skill are you terrible
at? Gaming, as in electronic gaming, like Fortnite, which I'll never play or try to. But I was one of 3 boys. I was the oldest, and I got smashed in all the Halo. 64 was my game. So when we go back to my folks' beach house, we pull out the old 64, and that's my domain. But Xbox, PlayStation, I'm hopeless.
Terrible. What are you reading right now?
Okay, as I mentioned before, a lot of journals and case studies with the MBA. So I touched on before around Tesco, and there was another one that I was reading recently, Harvard Business Review on loyalty schemes in the retail industry in general. So that's a little bit boring, but I've just come off. I had read in the last 6 months the Barefoot Investor. A great book and really simple, easy to read, but really important life lessons about finance.
What non-work thing are you really into?
Can I say sport? It's a bit boring.
I guess that qualifies.
I'm non-work thing. So I play a bit of footy where I can still, and while I can. Formula One racing, so a different sport, and just into actually just having fun with my 2 young boys. That's actually the new hobby of the last few years,
that's
particularly as they're old enough to engage back with now and do things together with.
And finally, where do you go to upskill?
So
obviously,
I've got my study. I've got all of that. I would say mentors, and that still continues to be a big one. And
where do you find your mentors? How do you approach your mentors? What's the agreement?
People within the reputable organisations around me. I have a person within this building in the AFL. I have one of my old bosses, board members that I used to work with, who I've really respected and really liked their approach the whole way out, and people that have just impressed me, and importantly that I feel like I can relate to. That we can have honest conversations. They can give me hard and honest feedback. That I may not always agree with, but we have a rapport and there is a connection there. If you don't have that, I'd say don't waste your time with it because it won't work with a mentor. And
how did you approach them? How did you sell?
It's really unexciting. It was.
Lots of people ask me this sort of. But how do you?
So if I thought, Isaac, that you can add value to what I wanted to do, I'd simply say, look, I'm really focused on improving myself as a person in my career. I think you'd really be able to help me. Would we be able to catch up once every 6 months as a bit of a mentoring session? I'll shout coffee or even breakfast if you want to eat, and would you be willing to do that?
Excellent. Well, thank you for being a mentor on this podcast. David Cannizzo, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Isaac. It's been great fun. Cheers.